Welcome to Community Unitarian Universalist Congregation at White Plains. We gather in the light of four truths. It is a blessing you were born. It matters what you do. Your experience of the divine is true. And an important reminder, you don't have to go it alone. If you're visiting us for the first time online this morning, please take a moment to click the link in the chat. Fill out the visitor form and let us know how you'd like to be connected with us. If you're new and visiting in person today, we invite you to stop by the welcome table and say hello. I would like to remind everybody to please silent their cell phones and other devices for the service. And later in the service, we will share the joys and sorrows of our individual lives. For those here in person, please take a moment to add your words to the book, which is located by the south windows. And for those of you on Zoom, please type yours in the chat. Our chalice lighting this morning are words by Christopher Rothbauer. We gather together this morning because others came before us. Some have left examples for us to follow, others lessons for us to learn from. And the paradox is that many have left both pain and joy. We honor our ancestors not because they are perfect, but because without them, we would not be here. Together, sharing our joy, our pain, our living, and our dying. Come, let us worship together.
It is truly a delight for me to introduce CUUC to the new Amsterdam choir singers today. The group reflects the lifelong passion of their founder and artistic director, James Backman, who, for over 35 years, has been a hands-on social justice reformer. He actively gives back to his home community in East Harlem by enriching the lives of children and their families, using choral singing as a catalyst. Membership in the ensemble requires discipline, respect, and academic success. Please stay for coffee hour after worship today to meet the singers, learn more about the group, and imagine ways in which our communities might continue to connect going forward. Now, please stay seated, but feel free to sing along as the new Amsterdam Choir Academy leads us in our first hymn, number 1051, We Are.
Come on, here we go. I invite anyone who is young or young at heart to join me for a story up front. How are you doing? Yeah, good, good. So, yesterday would have been my father's 90th birthday. And next month would have been my mother's 89th birthday. And we lost them both in 2012. So when their birthdays come around each year, my family has a practice of telling stories. And so for my dad, I always talk about his laugh. My dad had the best laugh. And my mom had this like mischievous, silly side that was so much fun. So even though we miss them so much, each year we take the opportunity to remember what they mean to us and how much we love them and how they touched our lives. And I got really lucky in the mom and dad department. I had really good ones. So the story that we're going to hear reminds me of that. See what you think. This is The Memory Tree by Britta Teckentrup, and there are pictures behind me if you want to see the pictures. There once was a fox who lived with all the other animals in the forest. Fox had lived a long and happy life, but now he was tired. Very slowly, Fox made his way to his favorite spot in the clearing. He looked at his beloved forest one last time and laid down. Fox closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and fell asleep forever. Everything around Fox was still and peaceful. Snow began to fall, gently covering him like a blanket. Owl had watched Fox from the top of the tree. He flew down and landed next to his friend. Owl was very sad. He had known Fox for a long time, but Owl knew the time had come for his friend to leave. One by one, Fox's friends came to the clearing. First squirrel and weasel, then bear, deer, and bird, finally rabbit and mouse, and others came to sit by Fox. Fox had been loved by everybody. He was so kind and caring, no one could imagine life in the forest without him. The animals sat in silence for a very long time. Owl was the first to speak. He smiled and said, "I remember Fox when I was very young. Every autumn we would race to see who could catch more falling leaves." The other animals remembered and smiled. Mouse said softly, "I remember how much Fox loved the sunset. He always sat in this exact spot." The animals remembered. Many of them had joined Fox, watching the sun go down. It was a happy memory, and their sad hearts filled with warmth. Bear remembered how Fox had looked after her cubs one spring. Rabbit smiled when she told the story of how Fox played tag with her in the tall grass. Squirrel talked about Fox helping him dig up buried nuts in the deep snow last winter. One by one, the animals remembered their favorite stories about Fox. Fox had touched all of their lives in the forest with warmth and kindness, and they smiled, remembering him. While the animals talked, a little orange plant grew out of the snow where Fox was lying. Small and delicate at first, and hardly noticeable, the plant grew bigger and stronger and more beautiful with each story. The animals talked about Fox all through the night, and in the morning, the little plant had grown into a small tree. The animals saw the tree and knew that Fox was still part of them. During the next days, weeks, and months, the animals remembered many more stories about Fox. Their heavy hearts began to feel lighter. The more they remembered, the taller the tree grew, higher and higher, more and more beautiful, until it was the tallest tree in the forest. A tree made from memories and love. Fox's tree was big and strong enough to shelter all the animals. It was always buzzing with life. The birds built their nests among the leaves. The owls raised his grand chicks on the branches, and Squirrel found a cozy home in the trunk. And guess where Bear and Deep and Rabbit slept? Where did they sleep? They slept under the shade of the tree. The tree gave strength to everyone who had loved Fox. And so, Fox lived on in their hearts forever. What do you think? You like that story?
Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where do we come from? Mystery, mystery. Life is a riddle and a mystery. Mystery, mystery. Life is a riddle and a mystery. Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? What are we? Where are we going? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where do we come from? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Where are we going?
Let us enter a time of prayer and meditation together. We hold in our hearts all of those who suffer, who struggle, who are in pain. We acknowledge ongoing struggles for power and control throughout our world. Spirit of life, grant us the persistence to set free all who are targeted, who are captive, and who are oppressed. As Unitarian Universalists, we are guided by the pursuit of justice and equity. Spirit of peace, we ask that you help us to focus on resolutions based in restorative rather than retributive justice. Let us acknowledge that our individual heritages and backgrounds can result in different perspectives on world events. We ask the Spirit of wisdom to help us remember that though we are non-creedal, we are united by choice and by covenant. And in this congregation, community is our first name. May we remain present to ourselves and each other as we seek in compassion to understand how other people think and feel. We hold in our hearts all that which has been spoken and unspoken.
In this faith, we engage generosity. We cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope, and we covenant to freely and compassionately share our faith, presence, and resources. Our generosity connects us to one another in relationships of interdependence and mutuality. We covenant to use our time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities. For all that we do within these walls and beyond these walls to further that vision, your generosity in all ways is expressed is deeply appreciated. For November, we share the plate with grab-and-go meal bags for hope. Our collection will help us purchase food for weekend lunch and breakfast bags for the clients of Hope Community Services in New Rochelle. This is a joint project of the Hunger and Homelessness Team and the Religious Exploration Ministry. Children and youth will be working together on 5 Sundays through the year to prepare the bags for donation.
Good morning. This morning's piano music was chosen to complement the theme of ancestors, in this case, musical ancestors. In the gathering music, I included a work by the 19th century Unitarian composer Edvard Grieg. For the offertory, I'm playing a work by a much more recent and local ancestor. Some of you may remember Jane Hart, who was a member here at Community Unitarian Church for many years until her passing in 1999. She was a lifelong musician, but sort of like Grandma Moses in the case of painting, who painted her first canvas when she was 80, Jane only turned to composing very late in life. And this is one of her works. It's called Humoresque.
This reading is by Victoria Safford, Set in Stone. In a cemetery once, an old one in New England, I found a strangely soothing epitaph. The name of the deceased and the dates had been scoured away by wind and rain. But there was a carving of a tree with roots and branches, a classic 19th century motif. And among them, the words, "She attended well and faithfully to a few worthy things." At first, this seemed to me a little meager, a little stingy on the part of her survivors. But I wrote it down and have thought about it since. And now I can't imagine a more proud or satisfying legacy. She attended well and faithfully to a few worthy things. Every day I stand in danger of being struck by lightning and having the obituary in the local paper say, for all the world to see, she attended frantically and ineffectually to a great many unimportant, meaningless details. How do you want your obituary to read? He got all the dishes washed and dried before playing with his children in the evening. She balanced her checkbook with meticulous precision and never missed a day of work. Missed a lot of sunsets, missed a lot of love, missed a lot of risk, missed a lot. But her money was in order. She answered all her calls, all her email, all her voicemail. But along the way, she forgot to answer the call to service and compassion and forgiveness, first and foremost of herself. He gave and forgave sparingly, without radical intention, without passion or conviction. She could not or would not hear the calling of her heart. How will it read? How does it read? And if you had to name a few worthy things to which you attend well and faithfully, what, I wonder, would they be?
How do we want to be remembered? What will that one sentence be? Knowing that those one sentences are awfully short and too one-dimensional. I mean, how can we express the fullness of someone's lives, the fullness of our relationship with them, the fullness of our grief and the love we felt, that we still feel for them? How can we summarize a person in a sentence? Often we turn to the longer obituary, the wordier examinations of a person's life. They often are just a sum of accomplishments, their work, their family, the awards and accolades, the ways in which the public might remember them. There's a whole department at the New York Times that has files of obituaries pre-written and updated when something notable happens, ready to go at a moment's notice. But even those are not long enough to capture the effect that someone has on your life. I think a lot about the time I worked on a particular panel for the AIDS quilt, for the Names Project, a panel for my friend and fellow theater geek, Rick. Rick died in the fall of 1989, just after casting a theater production of David Stevens' play, The Sum of Us. And a group of friends gathered to design his panel. And what mattered was not what Rick did, but who Rick was, what he loved, what made him laugh, what he taught us in his too short life. We couldn't bring Rick back, but we could imbue that 3 by 6 foot panel with what he taught us so that others could gaze upon it and know his story. And so then a few years later, I was a volunteer for the 1992 display of the quilt on the National Mall in Washington, D.C., wandering past blocks of panels, one after another, a seemingly endless sea of fabric and color and glitter. I realized how little we were able to actually tell of Rick's life in the one panel, how much richer the stories of all these people were than the cloth memorials we were presented with. These people, these ancestors, were telling us glimpses of their stories, sharing small drops of wisdom told to us as the wind whispered past by these ancestors who learned them and wanted them to live on, that the next generation might know them. Each panel told a story, and if we paid attention, we could glean their wisdom from these beloved souls, hear the lessons they left us. In May of 2020, when the New York Times posted one-sentence obituaries of the first 100,000 who died from COVID-19, wisdom was laid before us in black and white: kindness, generosity, intelligence, nature, nurture, achievement, relationship, justice, lessons that leapt off the page as we mourned those beloved souls. And of course, the first 100,000 is just a drop in the bucket, and sadly still growing. And of course, we add in all of the lives shockingly lost to gun violence, war, racism, oppression, and the lessons from these ancestors who shouldn't be ancestors for decades yet continue to inform us. The lessons of our ancestors stay with us for a long time. Now, often when we think of the ancestors, we think of our own immediate ancestors, 1, 2, maybe 3 generations gone. We hold on to their memory, celebrating and remembering, sometimes missing them or wondering what they'd think today. But they are just part of a long line of those billions who are long dead, hundreds, thousands of years dead, sharing wisdom from across vast expanses of time, wisdom we still hear in the wind, in their breath. And that wisdom is passed down from generation to generation, spoken, told, shown time and time again. Over time, the wisdom spoken becomes a wisdom inscribed. Wisdom in the Bible, the Quran, the Vedas, the writings of Confucius, the wisdom of the African traditions, the Celtic traditions, the indigenous traditions. All of this wisdom from our ancestors, not asking us to dwell in all that is lost, but rather reminding us to live, reminding us to love one another, reminding us to care for one another, reminding us to connect to one another and the earth, reminding us to remember. These powerful lessons that hold us and have held us for hundreds, thousands of years, lessons that keep our ancestors' memories alive, lessons we return to over and over that crop up in our world, our nation, our communities, our families, our hearts, lessons that matter. So coming back in from the billions to our more intimate human experience, for anyone who's lost a parent or grandparent or other family member, the lessons show up in the most unexpected places. So I hear my grandmother's, or my mother's voice, not even my grandmother's, I hear my mother's voice when mixing the stuffing on Thanksgiving. And she tells me, How does it feel? Do you need more water? Do you need another egg? It needs more salt, right? I also hear her when I'm decorating the Christmas tree, and she had very particular ideas about how to decorate a Christmas tree. And I hear her voice on election day, and I am transported to the 7-year-old me as I walk in, going into the voting booth. I remember going in with my mother, watching her pull the levers. Remember levers? And being fascinated by the sounds and the solemnity of the moment. My mother and father were fiercely committed to our learning history and civics and saw it as our sacred duty to understand government and participate by voting, by writing letters, by staying engaged, by teaching others so that the next generation might know them. Every time I enter a polling place, I feel a sense of purpose, of pride, and I'm overcome by a wave of grief. Although it's been 39 years since my father died and 16 since Mom, the grief comes back. My blood runs cold and my throat gets tight. And after a moment, I remember to breathe again. And I remember the moments, the lessons, the stories, not what they did, but what they taught, the way they were. And yes, it is comforting to remember the fun, the loving and touching moments, the happiness our loved ones brought us, the joyful times, the things that made us laugh. It's important to remember those things. And it is more important to remember what they taught us, the wisdom they passed down, the ways they called us to be our best selves, to love one another. These stories, and we all have them, these stories are precious. These lessons teach us. Their wisdom guides us from across the years, even into this moment. This moment when we are holding deep concerns for our community, our nation, and our world. This moment, as in every moment, when what we do bends the moral arc of the universe. Will it bend toward justice? That's the question. Now, if Theodore Parker, who's one of our Unitarian ancestors, is right, it will, because it has been, and it is. It's often hard to see. We exist in a time where racism, xenophobia, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, misogyny, homophobia, transphobia, classism, and ableism are on full display. Yet we see good people every day remembering that it is the poor and the mournful and the meek and the peacemakers and the righteous and the persecuted that are blessed, and acting as though that is the case every day, loving each other every day, seeing our faces in each other's eyes, being God's hands in the world every day. We must meet this moment as we have met every other moment, with love and humility as our ancestors taught. And our ancestors taught us too about facing discrimination, oppression, and violence head on. You see that lesson in the work of our ancestors Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. You see it in the work of Mahatma Gandhi. You see it in the work of Emma Goldman and Dorothea Dix. You see it in the work of Theodore Parker and Harriet Tubman. You see it over and over and over again, every generation of ancestors modeling the ways in which they met the moment so that we too can meet the moment. And let's remember that the lessons were examples of not just what to do, but how to live. Yes, challenge the oppressors, the violators, the bigots, and the discriminators. Fight for justice, fight for clean air and clean water and the survival of the planet. And be kind, share resources, listen to each other, care for one another, celebrate and mourn with one another, love one another, and show your love in the ways you help bend that moral arc toward justice. Our ancestors show us all the ways we might meet the moment, and the ways their ancestors taught and their ancestors before them. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are their legacy. We are part of the long history of humans trying to figure it all out, and sometimes failing, and sometimes being stymied by conditions far beyond our control. And in fact, the moment has always been upon us, not just recently, but for decades, centuries, millennia. Humans have been constantly fighting each other, wrestling with how to exist in peace with all that we need to thrive. And it does seem we're seeing that accelerate right now. It seems like the entire world is on fire, because it is, literally and figuratively. We are in the moment, and our ancestors are calling us to act. And so we must be prepared for more unrest, for more loss. We must be prepared to answer the call of those who are marginalized, immigrants, indigenous peoples, people of color, those suffering with poverty and homelessness, those considered other religiously, like Jews, Muslims, Sikhs, people with disabilities, queer folk, the elderly. We must be prepared to provide sanctuary and food and shelter and spiritual support, as well as being on the streets. We must be prepared to call our political systems to account. And if we're in one or more of those communities that are struggling, we must do still what we can to both give and receive support across our differences. There are many ways to meet the moment, many callings. Some are called to be on the streets, protesting, shouting loud. Some work in institutions. Some care for the human bodies. Some care for human spirits. Some are stewards of our planet and our resources. Some provide other resources. All are called to this moment. We are called in whatever form it takes to meet the moment our ancestors prepared us for, to be the blessing the world needs. We hear this over and over again. For millennia, our ancestors have called us, have taught us, encouraged us. The ancient prophet Hosea calls us to turn back to love and extend it to all. The prophet Amos calls us to rebuke undue influence of the powerful and let justice roll like water. The prophet Micah reminds us that God calls us to do justice and love kindness. And these lessons are echoed in our own Unitarian and Universalist ancestors. Ralph Waldo Emerson reminded us that we are born to be a reformer, a remaker of what has been made, a denouncer of lies, a restorer of truth and good. Susan B. Anthony calls us to forget conventionalisms, forget what the world thinks of you stepping out of your place, think your best thoughts, speak your best words, work your best works, looking to your own conscience for approval. Julia Ward Howe reminds us that ambitious people climb, but faithful people build. And closer to our time, 20th century Unitarian theologian James Luther Adams reminds us that we have a moral obligation to direct our effort toward the establishment of a just and loving community. And civil rights leader and U.S. Senator John Lewis called on us to make good trouble. I could go on and on and on and on. Our ancestors, from the ancient of ancients to those who have become ancestors only recently, give us what we need. They remind us to keep focused, the courage to work together across differences, to seek justice, equity, and compassion for all, and they hold us in the everlasting, steadfast love of all that is, a love that is boundless and beyond our imaginings, a love truly for all souls. We can meet this moment. We are called to this moment, and happily we are worthy of the call, worthy of meeting the moment, worthy of being our ancestors' prayers. And when we are ancestors, what will our lives say to those who come after? I'm going to invite you to sing with me a simple song of affirmation written by Sullivan and Iona Pugh. I'll teach it by singing the first verse, then I'll have you sing it with me, and we'll sing the four verses together. So here's how it goes. Let the life I lead speak for me. Let the life I lead speak for me. When I'm lying in my grave and there's nothing more to say, let the life I lead speak for me. Now come join me, the same verse. Let the life I lead speak for me. Let the life I lead speak for me. When I'm lying in my grave and there's nothing more to say, let the life I lead speak for me. Please rise. Let the work I do speak for me. Let the work I do speak for me. When I'm lying in my grave and there's nothing more to say, let the work I do speak for me. Let the love I share speak for me. Let the love I share speak for me. When I'm lying in my grave and there's nothing more to say, let the love I share speak for me. Here we go. Let the life I lead speak for me. Let the life I lead speak for me. When I'm lying in my grave and there's nothing more to say, let the life I lead speak for me. Amen. Please be seated. Barbara Pescan writes, because of those who came before we are, in spite of their failings, we believe. Because of and in spite of the horizons of their vision, we too dream. Let us go remembering to praise, to live in the moment, to love mightily, to bow to the mystery. Amen.
Good morning. I'm Mary Cavallero, and I'm happy to share the news that we are going to have t-shirts available. Okay, we're going to have, on the back, we will have the name of our congregation, their website, and the mission statement. On the front, we have the UUA Side with Love logo, and our shirts, as you can see, will be available in black and come in a variety of sizes, different sleeve lengths, come in women's sizes, unisex sizes, and youth sizes. I want to thank Pam Parker and Tracy Brenneman who made this possible. Now, there's one thing that even if you're a religious reader of the e-communitarian, you might not have noticed. The company we're dealing with only makes the shirts that we order, and they don't start making them until the sale ends. So the sale ends on November 19th. That means you have 2 weeks to get your order in. Okay? I know a lot of you have already bought them, and I thank you for that. These shirts will be a perfect way to display pride in our congregation that we love, and it'll help others to find us, whether you're in the supermarket or you're out there with public witnessing or on those marches that Kimberley was talking about. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us today. After worship, please join us in Fellowship Hall for a meet and greet coffee / pizza lunch with the new Amsterdam Choir Academy and their artistic director, James Backlund. We ask parents and guardians to pick up their children in 3rd grade and younger beforehand. Also, after service today, in the fireside area, we're hosting a lunch gathering for newcomers and those who feel new to CUC. Those of us online can connect with one another in our virtual chat hour space. We'll post the link in the chat. Ahead this week, on Saturday morning, we're sponsoring a CPR certification class here at CUC. Today is the last day to sign up. My script says to see Creighton Cray, who's not here this morning. So come see me if you'd like to join us. Saturday evening, we welcome the monthly Walkabout Clearwater Coffee House concert here in our sanctuary. And if you haven't already, please sign up for a cottage meeting with the search committee and be sure to purchase your tickets for the annual auction that's just 2 weeks away. Our weekly e-communitarian and RE newsletter offer details for these and more opportunities to connect and nurture this community that's so dear to all of us. It has been a gift to be together today. Please enjoy our postlude, Amani Yutupe, with the lyrics in both Swahili and English by the new Amsterdam Choir Academy. Then spend a few minutes talking with someone you don't know. Escort each other to coffee hour and the other events of the day. And may we all know the blessing of friendship.
Thank you.